Oh. So bright in the studio. We might not be able to face this way. We might have to face this way. Yeah. Can everyone hear me? Are we good? Yeah. Like, look at this. I look like a tomato. Yeah. I mean, it was hot in here too. So just a little conference. I know everyone wants to go about their day, but just a little conference, and then we can start the new year. I'm sure our families are waiting for us. So first, I want to thank everyone for being here and supporting this event. I mean, really, we've had four. Is it been four or three? Three awesome events. Led intermediate, the workshop that we did on shoulders and hips, and then obviously today, and it sort of caps off like our Practice with a Purpose month. And we've raised a bunch of money because of you guys. So I just want to say thanks. I also want to give sort of a special shout out. Melissa Matt sort of arranged this whole thing. So she's kind of like the organizer of it. And so, yeah, I just want to give a shout out to her and all the people that helped and supported it.
We raised $2,770 as of this morning. So thank you guys so much. That's awesome. We're really appreciative. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, and that was just for today or for all three?
For all three.
Okay, nice job, folks. Yeah, thank you. We'll put it to good use. So we have three programs. You guys already know about the three programs: teaching and treatment centers, recovery house, and then also the scholarship program. And this year, we're going to really be dialing into the scholarship program. If you know someone who needs some help, or even if they just need a community, this is a great place for them to start. And so, but if they can't join our community, they can join someone else's, and at one of our partner studios around the country, around the world. Not to toot my own horn, but I will say that if you start January 1st with a perfect lead class, which I just taught, I almost made a mistake early on and I caught myself, but all of the other, I almost said the wrong number and I stopped myself and I pulled it together and
Does it count when you accidentally hit the wrong time?
No, it does not. But you practice. That's the only thing that matters. Yeah. There's teachers that like lock the doors. Yeah. So Lisa showed up at 9 instead of 8, and so I didn't lock the door on you. Yeah. So she got to do her Mysore practice in her lead class, and you tried to skip a pose too. Yeah, I caught her. Even though I was in the midst of a perfect lead class. And I got video, and then I saw some bending of the knees of Navasana. I saw some cheats. I saw a little bit of everything. I'm just kidding, but also serious at the same time. So, so we're starting the year, and so I've already talked about. I always set goals, whys, all of this stuff. But one of the themes that has been sort of coming up in my head is that this idea of free will. And we have free will. So like it says this in basically every religious text. Like you're free to do whatever you want, but you're not free from the consequences of those actions or those decisions. And but it got me thinking, because if you apply sort of free will to the Yoga Sutras, it says that we're actually in bondage, like we're actually chained to our conditioned pattern of living. And this is interesting because, I mean, really, out of everything, this should essentially make you upset or pissed, and I think part of the reason why is because we want to say we have free will, but unfortunately, you're chained to the things that you have always done. And most of the time, they're trauma responses. It doesn't really say that in the Yoga Sutras, but it is a response. They're called vasanas. And what happens is a vasana is expressed, and it's expressed in a good way or a bad way. And it doesn't matter because you're tied to it, because you're familiar with that experience. So if you take something like, addiction, we practice them with the purpose, all this stuff. You take addiction. I mean, one of the reasons why a lot of times people look at it like it's morality is because they say like, well, why can't this person just make better decisions? It becomes like, you should just be better than this kind of thing, which is shaming. And I mean, there's a whole thing about that, which I don't really want to talk about. But there's a lot there. And it's like, why can't you make better decisions? Well, the person who's in addiction, basically is chained to this conditioned pattern over and over and over again, regardless of whether or not it's destroying them or not, And this idea of free will, it obviously gets brought up in all these religious texts. And I've been thinking about it a lot because we're kind of chained to these behaviors over and over and over again. And the good news is that you will continue to be chained to them if you never recognize them. The drinking of coffee, the oversleeping, the drinking the alcohol, smoking the cigarettes, smoking the weed, whatever it is, going to Starbucks, overspending on Amazon, like whatever it is, you're chained to that pattern of behavior. And it's your job, like as you practice, and you hear me say like your job, it's not my job, it's your job alone. It's your own personal responsibility where you get to decide whether or not that's a behavior that you want to continue or not. And the good news is we practice yoga and we see these behaviors. You can tell them almost immediately, as soon as it shows up, and it could go further than this. It can go gambling. It can be subtle. It can be like your subtle food choices, like the comfort food, their inability to have difficult conversations. There's like a million things that you can do that creates the same pattern over and over and over again. Do you know what I'm talking about or no? Yeah. Yeah. Everyone's like, yeah. Yeah. Well, again, the good news is that we practice yoga and it gives us awareness, and that awareness like gives us the opportunity to make choice, because being in that conditioned pattern over and over and over again, what it does is it creates suffering because you're actually not responding out of free will. You are not. Okay. And that's what should piss you off. And this sometimes comes from trauma. Like this comes from like, your response to, picking a spouse or partner, or the stuff can be from that, or that you seek comfort, or that you go and hide, or whatever it is. When met with a difficult circumstance, you pick the same thing over and over and over again. And as we practice, we gain this awareness, and this awareness gives us choice to get us out of the suffering, And unfortunately, life is painful, but you don't have to suffer as a result of life. And the suffering is what we do to ourselves. It's not what other people do to us. It is what we do to ourselves. And there is no other harsher critic to me than me. If you heard how I talk to myself, like I would never talk to another person the way that I talk to myself, and that's just the awareness that I have. And I've chosen to stop. I don't stop the voices that are in my head, but I do have enough awareness where I stop paying attention to them. And they can be there, they can be processed, and I can also say whether or not they're valid or not. And that only happens with yoga. And so last conference, I was talking about like, okay, well, your why and your goals and what's your intention and all of that stuff is super important. But the higher level of learning is really to look at the patterns that you have in your life and say, like, does that serve where I want to go? And if it doesn't serve where you want to go, then you have to change. Because essentially not being able to change is sort of the essence of addiction and essence of being, have this bondage. And man, that's a really tough thing to do, because even though that it might give you sort of this same or this continuation of the same thing in your life, it's also not where we want to be, and that right there essentially is where all of like the unhappiness and disgruntled and all that stuff pops up, and it's hard to recognize it. And this is the human condition. Actually, this is like what the Yoga Sutras is talking about, that we have these that we have these stories that we tell ourselves and all this stuff, and what we're trying to do is basically break free of the bondage of them, because they've created the life that you want, or excuse me, they've created the life that you have currently, maybe not the life that you actually want, and as we practice, and I've been really dialing into this, I said this in my Instagram video, but we are focused on our breath when we do our practice. Like that needs to be a primary focus. Okay. Like it needs to be the one thing that we're paying attention to all the time, because the only power that we have is not necessarily that we're creating this heat, like the heat can create sort of transformation as well. But the breath gives us the ability to have clarity. And without that clarity, you can't make better choices. Okay. And all of this is happening on your yoga mat. It's like, it's not like this is really not an exercise, even though that we're doing an exercise. This is more like going and seeing Sigmund Freud, which is basically the same exact thing as if you read the sutras and you read some of Sigmund Freud's stuff, it's almost the exact same thing, but written in Western language instead of Eastern. There's like very clear comparisons to this. And this is also why, so in psychoanalysis or whatever, this is, the therapist becomes your spouse or husband or whoever, and you project all of this stuff on there. And it's supposed to be okay in that setting. I'm not a therapist, but again, even though that we're doing this kind of work, you'll project stuff onto me and to other people, and you'll create a story sometimes that is not true, as a result of it. And I think all the Mysore teachers know this, and all that to say, like, there's a lot at play here. Like there's a lot at play, so like when you set your intention for this year and you set your goals and you set your why and you say that you're going to be here, like this is not a resolution, folks. We're not doing resolutions. Like what we're doing is we're making commitments, and commitments to ourselves, commitments to looking at our behavior, commitments to looking at our relationships and food choices and sleeping patterns and our like all of these behaviors that we were just talking about, all these things, so that we can show up and we can be different, because the last thing you want is for 2025 to look like 2024 or 2023, like I don't know anyone who wants to stay the same. It's like, we want to be different. We want life to be exciting. We want to be happy and joyful and free and have a good life and a good outlook, not to live life with a straitjacket on, like it can just flow for us. And the clearer that we get, the more ability that we have to just like let things be the way that they are. Life sucks, rolls off of you. Grief rolls off of you. The death of a relationship rolls off of you. A relapse, getting back on it, letting it roll off of you, getting back on it, like whatever it is, like, and just like letting it be where it needs to be. And then continuing with the commitment of being here, being on Zoom or being wherever, to take care of ourselves. And this is like the highest order that we have. No one can do this work for you. It is all up to you. And I will say that you have the opportunity to look at the behaviors and change the behaviors if you want. You are powerful enough to do it. Your mind is powerful enough to do it. I've done it in my life. I've seen it happen countless times. People who feel insecure or self-conscious all of a sudden like end up getting degrees, and people like end up starting businesses. People who, you know, didn't feel good about themselves, watch themselves become empowered by doing the practice. People who are scattered end up being focused and disciplined. People who say, I mean, if I had $1 for every time someone said I'm not a morning person, I probably wouldn't be on this call right now, because I'd probably have $1 million, you know? Like there's a lot, and just magically there's like 40 people online, and there's, you know, people showing up at the studio. It's like, who are not morning people. Yeah. So like all these things that we tell ourselves, like we can be different. We can be different. So, yeah. And so this idea of free will, it's like, well, I mean, do you actually want it? Because in order to have free will, which gets thrown around pretty easily nowadays, like everywhere, it's like, oh, I can do whatever I want. Yeah, you can. You can do whatever you want. But you'll keep on making the same choices because you're still dealing with the stuff that you fail to look at. And I'm no better than any of you guys. Like, I'm not sitting here preaching. Like, this is actually, if anything, this is like testimony. It's like, I'm chained to my patterns too. I know them though. And sometimes I'm sitting here going like, I'm going to choose the shitty one, the bad one, because I just want to feel like that. And other times I'm like, I'm not doing that anymore. Like that's not me anymore. Like last night, like everything in me, I was like, oh, you know what? I want to, like, I should go out, you know? I haven't been out forever. But last year we went out for like first time. I was like, you know, I should go out and be with everyone. I got a pizza. I made the pizza. The kids were at the beach. I made the pizza. I hung out. I watched a TV show about Avicii, documentary on Avicii. And then I went straight to bed. And I was like, it's more important for me to be at class and to start the way that I did here today, instead of some idea that I don't even do that. But that was the thought that came into my head. You know, it's like, I'm going to go party and be with everyone. Like, what party was I going to go to? There was no party. There was no party. But the idea was like, I should be somewhere other than where I'm at. And man, that's the story. It's like, oh, I'm not comfortable here. I need to be somewhere else, or I don't fit in here. I need to be somewhere else. Yeah.
Because the hardest thing about having an awesome practice is like breaking systemic pattern.
Yeah. 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 The systemic pattern. Yeah, for sure. So, but we get clarity and we have choice, and we can choose not to suffer. And I think that's one of the most important things that I can tell you today, because like, you know, as you set your why, and I mean, a lot of times in recovery, we say like, these are suggestions, you know, like in recovery, we say there's a lot of suggestions, you know, this is a suggestion, you know, it's like, but if you want to get sober, guess what? They're not suggestions. Yeah. Yeah, you actually have to do them. But we say they're suggestions, so we like bring you in, and it's like, oh yeah, it's like, this is a suggestion. But it's not really. You need to do it. This is my suggestion to you guys. Yeah. The why, the goals, spend 5 minutes, do what you need to do, get your mind right. We have an awesome opportunity. You have an awesome community. We have a bunch of people that I love and care about that are around me. And I can't think of better people to spend this morning with, you know? And so I'm really grateful for it. So, yeah. Any of that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Again, thank you all for being here. Thank you for spending the morning with me. Enjoy some time with your family. We are back here at 6 a.m. tomorrow. So I'll see whether or not you've done your commitments and whys tomorrow. So thank you all.
Thank you, Taylor.
Of course.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Everybody, thank you.
Happy New Year. Thanks for adjusting your mommy for me. See you, folks.